Hello, everyone. Welcome into the SEC Mafia football podcast, where we dive deep into SEC reviews this week. All things SEC football on this podcast, from thrilling football matchups, to not so thrilling football matchups. We got you covered here, whether you're a diehard fan or an aspiring athlete or just curious about, the incredible conference, that is the Southeastern Conference. This is your place to be. So grab your favorite popcorn and buckle in, folks.
SEC Mafia. Today is an exciting day. Today we close the chapter. We're done with 2024. We're done with all the reviews. The next time we come on here 2 weeks from now, we will be looking ahead to 2025. We've got several camps that are already open for spring. We're marching towards several spring games. I know there are several schools that have spring games or spring scrimmages or whatever we're calling those these days, scheduled for April the 12th. But yeah, today we close out 2024, looking ahead to 2025.
Yep, absolutely. And with that, we rolling right along. Here is your SEC Mafia contact information. X handle is at SEC Godfather. We do have an email set up here on your screen if you were watching on YouTube. And if you were listening at home via Spotify or Amazon, our Facebook is SEC Mafia. It is a public group. Got a lot of feedback on that one. So we're trying to keep that one up and keep in contact with everyone.
Yeah, definitely pay attention to the Twitter page or the X handle, whatever you want to call it. We put out random polls, things like that, where we, in the off season, we'll ask about favorite players of all time, or we put a poll out last week asking who do you think was going to be the surprise sleeper from this year for next year, being, who had a losing record. I think it was Oklahoma, Auburn, Mississippi State, and Oklahoma. Who did you think would have the biggest turnaround for the next year? So we're all the time doing interactive things like that. So definitely pay attention to those.
Absolutely. And with that, we're going to throw it right in to the final review of review season. It's close. It's close. We can smell the pigskin in the air, here in T-Town.
What's crazy? What's crazy is seriously think about it like this. The national championship was January the 20th. We're already getting close to the middle of March. We're really already almost 60 days removed from the end of college football season. I mean, we're really already over a fourth of the way through the off season, getting ready for the next season. I mean, really and truly, it will be here before you realize it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You'll blink and it'll be here, and then you'll blink and it'll be gone again.
Absolutely.
LSU Tigers, 9-4 overall this season, 5-3 in the SEC. Highest of highs for the LSU Tigers, Mr. Randy from Mobile. We'll let you begin.
So I was kind of torn between two here, South Carolina and Ole Miss. I'm going to go with Ole Miss because at the time we didn't realize how big of a win South Carolina was. The South Carolina game was early in the season. South Carolina, of course, hadn't went on their 6-game winning streak. They started out 3-3 before they, got hot and won their last 6. So I'm going to go with Ole Miss, the 29-26 overtime win against the Ole Miss Rebels from a high for LSU.
Yeah, I'm going to have to join you with that one. The atmosphere of that game, the quality of that game, and the ability of Brian Kelly and the team to overcome in overtime. And like you said with the South Carolina game, we didn't realize, we thought that LSU just played a down game that game, and turns out, that South Carolina was the real deal. So I'm going to have to go with Ole Miss as well. For my low, it seems that Brian Kelly has a tendency to just lose the opening game of both seasons the past couple of years. So opening with a loss to USC again and not starting fast in his season is my low.
For me, it's got to be the 3-game losing streak to Texas A&M, Alabama, and Florida. Yeah, they lost to USC. They turned it around, won 6 straight. They're sitting 6-1, and then they lose at Texas A&M. Pretty tough place to play. Competitive to Texas A&M took over in the second half. But I guess the lowest of those 3 has to be losing Alabama. Alabama is LSU's biggest rival. LSU came into that game with only one conference loss. They were in the thick of the playoff hunt. They were in the thick of the SEC hunt. And it wasn't just that they lost, but they lost 42-13. That's got to be the lowest of lows, to lose at home to your biggest rival by 29 points and be absolutely embarrassed. Toward the end of the game, Brian Kelly's trying to score just to make it look a little better. Well, Alabama's blitzing and they're trying to stop it because, hey, if you're trying to score, we're going to try to stop you. And Brian Kelly actually starts complaining to the officials because Alabama's blitzing.
Man, let me just tell you something. That game was nonetheless satisfying for me because last time I walked into Death Valley, a piece of Death Valley came with me. Tell you what, I got stormed on in Death Valley and screamed at and swatted at. So for us to go down there, or them to go down there, let's say, I'm long removed from the program, but for them to go down there and to absolutely just dog walk them and put them on a leash and pull them and yank them wherever, it was phenomenal. Thank you, Brian Kelly, for the seat back from Tiger Stadium.
It was probably one of Alabama's better performances, to say the least.
Absolutely. So it was my final grade for them was nothing based off biased. They finished where they were supposed to finish in terms of preseason rank, in terms of outlook of the conference. They finished tied for third technically because, my goodness, there was 5 and 3 finishers across the board. They finished tied for third, but technically due to head-to-heads and overall, they finished 7th. Preseason rank had them at 7. I gave them a straight B, an 85 across the board. There's a lot of room to improve on. And I do think they will. It's just a matter of starting the season strong and winning some of these big time games down the stretch.
Yeah, let's talk about the LSU Brian Kelly for a moment and not bring up the Notre Dame Brian Kelly. The biggest knock with the LSU Brian Kelly was the defense his first couple of years, especially in Jaden Daniels last year when you had a very prolific offense.
Yes.
One of the best seasons from a quarterback in SEC history. A guy wins the Heisman Trophy and you waste it because your defense is giving up 30 and 40 points a game. They made some changes on the defensive side of the ball, brought in a new defensive coordinator, the guy from Missouri, and defense did get better. They did improve. So I'm going to be as harsh on them for that. It did seem like the offense took a small step back, which is very acceptable whenever you lose a generational talent like Jaden Daniels. But for me, I'm going to be just a little bit harsh or harsher than you and just give them a B minus. And the reason being is that USC game, USC ended up 7-6. They were 6-6 in the regular season. They were very average. They were very
mediocre,
middle of the road. And to lose that game and then lose 3 straight to Texas A&M, Alabama, and Florida, I'm going to say B minus.
I love it. I love it. Again, thank you, Brian Kelly, for my seat bag. I sit on it every Saturday, and think of you. I'm joking. Alabama Crimson Tide, Dixieland Delight. Oh me, 9-4 overall for the year, 5-3 in the SEC. If your highest of high is not the Georgia game, then I don't know if you even watch college football. That's got to be the game of the year right there. I mean, wouldn't you concur?
I will, and I'll go a different route than what you just said for this reason, just so we're different. I think my high, let's say my highest of highs for this Alabama team, I'm going to give you 2 right here. One, just getting through the season. This was there'll never be a season, probably in our lifetimes, in which an entire organization
just absolutely catastrophic change
gets the bomb dropped on it to where the greatest of all time at the height of his career steps away from the game. Now, I know there's a lot of older Alabama fans that are going to say, well, Bear Bryant retired at one time. Yeah, Bear Bryant retired at one time. But after that 79 season, you could see in 80 and 81, you could really see the drop off. You could see the age getting to Bear. You could see the strong spirits and the cigarettes taking a toll on old Bear at that point in time, and he was kind of aging a bit, and they weren't on top of the college football pinnacle the way Alabama has been for the last 17 years. Nick Saban off of a playoff appearance, a 4-team playoff appearance, in which they took the national champion to overtime
to the wire,
for
the
him
final
to
play.
Lost in overtime on the final play, had a chance to tie it up or to score and go for 2 and win the game. So just getting through that season, I think was a much bigger goal than what a lot of people will realize. 2, I know it wasn't the season Alabama fans wanted. Yes, I know you lost 3 games, but one thing that this coaching staff has shown is that when they get kicked down, they get back up. You lose a shocker to Vandy, you turn around the very next week and you beat what we thought was a fringe playoff South Carolina team the very next week. You lose to Tennessee, you turn around the next week and you shut Missouri out 34-0. You lose to Oklahoma and you have your playoff dreams dashed. The same week Auburn beats Texas A&M and they storm the field and they've got all the momentum and they're talking trash, and then you turn around from that and you beat Auburn by 14 at home. So I just think the resiliency of this team from getting through the Saban retirement, getting through the season, beating Georgia, beating South Carolina, beating Missouri, beating LSU on the road, beating Auburn for the 5th straight year. I just think their resiliency was the highest of highs for me.
Very, very well spoken. Very wise words from Randy from Mobile.
That's what you get here on SEC Mafia from Randy.
I told the listeners, hey, get your popcorn ready. Just like Lane said, man, get your popcorn ready. Get your favorite candy snacks. It's going down. Lowest of lows, Mr. Randy. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it's either got to be Vanderbilt or Oklahoma. Which one are you going with?
I think they're both equal in terms of losses. They're both equal, but I think the significance of losing to an opponent that you haven't lost to since 1981, I think you have to go. I think you have to go Vandy. But here's the thing:
you can't choose both. You can't have it both ways. Choose one or the other.
Listen, I want my cake and eat it too right here, because Oklahoma is a blue blood. Oklahoma is a blue blood. Oklahoma's roots run deep, and you lost in a fashion where they drug you up and down the field, and you're playing for the playoffs. You have motivation to get somewhere, to do something, to make the 12-team playoff, and that's what you put out on the field. But for the terms of now, I'm going to go Vanderbilt. I have never witnessed a Vanderbilt loss until this year in my lifetime. Haven't lost to them since 1981. I'm going to have to go with Vandy.
Here's why you're wrong. Yes,
what do you mean?
Here's why you're wrong. Alabama, sure, they haven't lost to Vanderbilt since the 80s. But going back to divisions, Alabama's not played Vanderbilt every single year since the 80s.
That's true.
It's not like they've won, 38 straight times.
But it's one of those teams to where when you cross paths with them, you should beat them.
I agree.
I would never say that about another opponent. But that is one of those teams that you do.
But let me say this. Vanderbilt brought in 50 new players, completely flipped their roster, brought in an all-new coaching staff, brought in Jerry Kill to kind of be an associate head coach, brought in a new offensive coordinator. I mean, they really did flip their roster. And here's why I don't think it's Vanderbilt. In this new age of 12-team playoff, after you beat Georgia and you have a letdown and you lose a conference game on the road to a team who had a bye the week you were playing Georgia, by the way, that's not the end of the world in this 12-team format. And that was a game that just started off weird. Vanderbilt jumped up to a 14-0 lead because of a pick six. There were several just ungodly penalties. Two players were on the field wearing number 2 at the same time on a punt return that gave Vanderbilt a free first down in which they scored. There was a bogus roughing the passer call that was called that gave Vanderbilt a free first down in which they scored on. So that was just a weird game anyway, coming off of the heels of that Georgia game. I'm going with Oklahoma specifically for the reason you beat Missouri 34-0. You beat LSU 42-13. You beat Mercer 52-7. You got everything rolling, and you've got Oklahoma and Auburn standing in front of you. And at this time, a potential berth in Atlanta because you held the tiebreaker over Georgia, who had a second loss to Ole Miss, and a playoff berth. And you go to Oklahoma, and you get beat 54-3.
And you do that.
And here's and again, I know we've got all off season to talk about this, but this is why I would be excited, or why I am excited as an Alabama fan. I thought the moment was too big for Nick Sheridan this season.
Mm-hmm.
Now, rewind to a year ago, Ryan Grubb's hired as the offensive coordinator. He's brought in, and about a month after being in Tuscaloosa, before his house is sold in Seattle, before he's established a home here in Tuscaloosa, the Seahawks call, they offer him a job, and he realizes, I don't have to move my daughter, I don't have to move my wife, I can stay in my own home, and I can coach out there. I'm going to do what I think's best for my family. At that point in time, there's really nobody to find as an offensive coordinator. So Sheridan's promoted from within. I think that Oklahoma game really showed how big the moment was for him. That was one of the games that you and I actually watched together. And after the first 2 designed quarterback runs, we sat there and we said, Venables is spine. Sometimes he's even double spine. He is not going to let Jalen Milroe beat him with his legs the way LSU was beat by Milroe running for over 200 yards. They're not going to do that. They are stopping that. At this point in time, any designed run from this point on, really even an RPO with the quarterback keep on it, was a wasted play.
Mm-hmm.
And Sheridan just continued to call quarterback run after quarterback run. And I think a lot of Milroe's downfall that game was the play calling.
Coaching.
It was
Yeah, I think
absolutely atrocious. Not only did you have Milroe struggling a little bit because of the play calling, but he continued to call RPOs to where he could either hand it off or
giving them
throw
too
it.
much of a choice.
Yeah, giving him too much of a choice. At that point in
Instead,
time,
instead of giving him something to get him going, something where you don't have to think, just a handoff, or just just
yes,
something quick, quick
a design
slant.
screen, a
Yes,
design hitch,
yes.
something to get him going. Even if you throw a screen pass for 1 or 2 yards, it's still a completion. You're still seeing the ball leave your hand, go into somebody else's hand. It's going to give you a little bit of motivation there, a little bit of confidence. And I just thought the play calling was atrocious. And it would not be a true SEC Mafia podcast if we didn't throw the disclaimer that the worst call in college football by the officials was made during this game this year.
Well, that's the good SEC officiating that we had across the board for a bunch of teams.
No
But
doubt it was bad.
there was a thing that you said about Alabama fans being fired up. I just think that if this game shows any fan anything, it should fire up any fan. Vanderbilt fans, Oklahoma fans, Missouri fans, any of those middle of the road teams, because this just shows you the parity that, one, the NIL has brought, and two, the transfer portal has brought. Because any given Saturday, it does not matter. It does not matter. Any given Saturday, if that is one thing that this college football season showed us, was that any given Saturday, it could be your team. And I
Well,
mean,
and I want to remind everybody of this. Vanderbilt is still an SEC member that's still going to be getting about $75 million a year in SEC money.
mm-hmm.
Okay. To where the Clemsons, the Florida States, the Miamis of the world, they're only bringing in about 35 to 40 million of ACC TV right dollars. So you still got Vanderbilt bringing in almost twice as much TV revenue as those guys. It is still an SEC caliber team. And in this NIL transfer portal age in which we live in, you're going to see more and more and more of this. You're going to see more and more of Ole Miss dominating Georgia. You're going to see more of Oklahoma struggling one season and beating in Alabama. You're going to see that type of stuff because everybody's second team has been gutted by NIL. Guys are not going to sit here. Guys are not going to sit here and set the bench and wait their turn for 2 years. They're going to transfer out as a freshman or a sophomore to where they can go play. And that's just the way it is. And not only can they transfer out unlimited and go play and go find somewhere that they can go play, there's a lot of schools out there willing to pay them a lot of money to go do it. So you just don't have the depth. You don't have like Alabama had back in 2009. You look back at some of the position rooms that Alabama had under Nick Saban's tenure. You go back to 2009, you had Mark Ingram, you had Trent Richardson, you had Eddie Lacy redshirting because he couldn't get on the field. You had 3 NFL caliber backs in that one room. You're not going to see that anymore. I don't think you're going to see a wide receiver room like the rideouts to where you've got Devontae Smith, who is a very good receiver, but he's waiting his turn until the guys in front of him leave. I don't think you're going to see a quarterback room to where you've got Jalen Hurts and Tua sitting behind him for a year, Mac Jones sitting behind both of those guys for 3 years. You're just not going to see that stuff anymore. And so you're not going to have that development. And so I think you're going to see teams like Alabama, Georgia, Texas. You're going to see them be good, average 1 year, be good, average for a year. And you're going to see teams like Vanderbilt be able to flip their rosters around and pull off some incredible wins.
Yep. Final grade, Randy.
My grade's not as bad as people would think. I'm not as down on Alabama as a lot of people are. Yeah, this false narrative is floating throughout the social media world. Kalen DeBoer inherited the best roster in college football and went 9-3.
He did not.
He did not. Go back to that Rose Bowl that Nick Saban lost his last game. Caleb Downs gone. Trey Amos transferred out. Kool-Aid McKinstry, NFL. Terry Arnold, NFL. You lost not only your entire secondary out that team, but you pretty much lost your second team secondary to the transfer portal. You lost your incoming freshman quarterback, Julian Sayin. You lost 2 running backs, Jace McClellan to the NFL. You lost Rory Dale Williams to Florida State. You lost Malik Benson to Florida State. I mean, there was a ton of guys that left. You didn't inherit the best roster in college football. That was Ohio State. That was proven by their dynamic playoff run. So for me, I think holding the team together, really seeing the growth of the defense and seeing the way Kane Womack brought the defense together. And when you look at Alabama's last 5 or 6 games, their defense was very, very stout. I'm going to say a solid B. I'm almost at the B plus range, but I didn't go B plus because of that Michigan bowl game debacle. Had they beat Michigan, I would have probably said B plus. Because they lost to Michigan, I'll just go solid B.
So I was in between a solid B and a B minus. And I guess I was a little more harsh than you, just because if you look throughout the season, there was a common theme that, a lot of people saw. We saw it. This was not a level of talent issue per se. Now, he did not inherit the best roster like you were talking about, but there was still talent on the field. The level of talent wasn't the issue, just like we saw in the Oklahoma game. Some of the play calling and the coaching situations that the players were put in, that was my argument. And I went with a B minus, and I'll call it an 84.5. Like they were right there at the B, and not getting a 10th win, for the first time since 2007, that really was damaging to their grade for me. So I went B minus.
I'll also say this. This is what I'm looking for this year. And this is something that's got to be fixed, okay? When Saban retired, January the 8th, 9th, whatever day it was. The portal window opened up for Alabama for 30 days, in which there's nobody for Alabama to go get.
No.
But yet everybody in the country can try to poach off of Alabama's roster. Kalen Moore comes in, and now he's trying to finish up that recruiting class. He's trying to make connections. He's trying to hire a staff. Oh, by the way, I've got to recruit the current team that I inherited because everybody's trying to back channel and go through the back door and get them out of the portal. I think just to kind of get through that portal window, get through spring and not lose anybody in the next window that was about to open up, I think you saw this staff take a step back, kind of let the players take control, let the players lead, and kind of let it be a player-led team. And I just don't know that in this NIL era, transfer portal era, that you can just have a true player-led team. But I think that was needed just to get through this year. I mean, you think about a lot of Alabama fans are on top of the Empire State Building, or they're on top of Vulcan ready to jump off because of a 9-3 season. Think about how bad it would have been if when Ryan Williams decommitted when Saban retired, he never recommitted. How bad would it have been if Caden Proctor never came back from Iowa? How bad would it have been if Jalen Milroe and Devontae Lawson and Tyler Booker and about 3 or 4 more other guys jumped in the portal and left? Because I promise you they had offers and they had opportunities. So,
They sure
I
did.
mean, yeah, 9-3 or 9-4, whatever, was tough, but you were probably only a move or two away from 6-6 or 7-5 and going into a complete rebuild. So I'm not as harsh as a lot of folks.
No. Spring practice for Alabama begins on the 13th, with their spring game being aired on television on the 18th. Who knows?
Spring practice for Alabama started last Monday.
Oh, on their official website, it said the
4th
13th.
is when it started. They've already had 3 practices.
I think the 13th is when they go full pads, is what I was reading. Who knows? SEC Mafia may make a surprise appearance on the 18th. Who knows? We'll
12th.
see. The
I
12th
think
is
you were
the spring
looking.
game.
Yeah, I
No,
think you
no,
were
no, no,
looking
no.
at
I'm
last
talking about
year's.
the spring game. The spring game, April 18th.
Yeah, April the 12th is the spring game. You're looking at last year's.
Am I looking at
That's
the wrong
last year's
date?
information. Yeah, you're looking at last year's information.
No.
I promise.
April 12th. Anyway, Florida.
Trust me, bro. I host a podcast.
Yeah, we know you do. Earlier, you were about to quit on me.
The artist formerly known as Randy from Mobile.
The artist formerly known as Randy from Mobile. Florida Gators, 8-5 on the year, 4-4 in the SEC. Randy, go ahead and lead us off.
Highest of high for Florida. Gosh, I hate to say this. This sounds so terrible. Probably Graham Mertz getting hurt.
Yeah.
And I don't think you should ever celebrate someone getting hurt. I don't think it should ever be a good thing. But Graham Mertz going down and getting hurt allowed us to be introduced fully to DJ Lagway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good one. I think that my high is not a game. It's something that is not tangible. And that is Billy Napier not losing the locker room throughout this season. To be able to route these guys in, come together throughout the season and hold them together. That's my high for Billy Napier.
Yeah, I mean,
And the Florida
supposedly the
Gators.
boosters came together and they
were
met
ready.
with the administration. They had the money. They was going to buy him out. He was done.
Per insider sources, like week 2 or 3, they said, you've got this amount of a threshold, dude. Like he had the tiniest sliver of ice that he was treading. And they said that the money was compiled together to go and hand to him on his desk and say, see you later. And they flipped the script.
Now again, I don't want to act like I know anybody from Florida. Some of the stuff I've read and heard was they came together. They said, we want the guy gone. The ADs and the administration said, well, if we fire him now, You're going to have guys that are going to opt out for the rest of the season.
Leave.
They're going to be tampered with. This roster is going to be gutted. Let's wait to the end of the season to make a move. And I think the way they finished and beat LSU, Ole Miss, Florida State, and Tulane in the bowl game, I think they realized, hey, maybe this guy does need another year or two. By far, I think this was one of the hardest schedules. You ended up playing 13th ranked Miami, playoff participant Tennessee, playoff participant Texas, playoff participant Georgia. You beat 14th ranked Ole Miss, who just barely missed it. You played LSU. I mean, this was an atrocious schedule.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, the fact that they went 500% this year in the SEC, Billy Napier's best year in the SEC. His best year overall. I mean, they finished 5-7 in 2023 and 6-7 and lost a bowl game in 2022. The way that they were able to finish out this season, not necessarily finish out games because that ties into my low, but the way that they were able to finish out this season and win their bowl game and get to 8 wins on the year, it ties into the high there of Billy Napier being able to bring these guys together and fight on, and finding DJ Lagway. I mean, 6-1 as a starter. He's a freshman playing like a veteran this whole year. He had to grow up fast, and the way that he did it, it was fun to watch him.
Absolutely.
My low, not being able to finish big games, going to overtime with Tennessee and losing that way. Now, Georgia, they started fast, had them on the ropes, sort of by halftime, and then DJ Lagway getting hurt. You can't really account for that, but not being able to finish those big games, that should be Billy Napier's next up on his totem pole is finally getting that one big win. Kind of like we saw Lane Kiffin get this year against Georgia, just finally getting over the hump and getting that one big, huge win.
Yeah, for me, that's my lowest of the lows. I'm not going to throw. I know Florida State is their biggest rival. I understand that, but when you go 2-10, we're not putting much stock in the signature win category. For me, looking at their next 3 biggest rivals, Georgia, Tennessee, that's their 2 biggest SEC rivals, and then you've got Miami. You got to find a way to get a big win against one of your rivals. You've got to find a way. Now, I know they had some bad luck in there. I know that DJ Lagway started against Georgia, started well. It was a 7-point ball game, and then he got hurt, and then Georgia ends up pulling away and wins by 14. Tennessee, that's really when Lagway came in, brought them back and got them to overtime, and he was really sort of born and was handed the reins that night. I don't know. I just think the Tennessee game, they just went into that, especially the fourth quarter and overtime, just not aggressive enough. When they scored to force overtime on the road, I thought they should have went for 2 and tried to win it right there.
Go for it. Go for it on the road. I was lenient with Florida on my final grade. They finished 10th in the SEC this year, and preseason had them ranked 12th. So they did better than preseason rankings. And they, won the Gasparilla Bowl 33-8, dominated against G5 Tulane, 500% in the SEC. I gave them a solid B+ this year. The fact that they had to go through the gauntlet of a schedule and came out, 4-4 in the SEC, 8-5 overall, I gave them an 88 B+.
Yeah, it was the common joke in the preseason that if Florida went 7-4 or 7-5 or 8-4, that Billy Napier deserved a raise. And by golly, they went 7-5. I mean, there was a lot of people in the preseason that thought, against that schedule, we wouldn't be surprised if Florida won 5 games. I mean, we didn't know Florida State was going to be that bad. They ended up getting a win against LSU and Ole Miss that nobody really saw coming. So I agree, B+.
Yep, B+.
That takes us to Vanderbilt, right?
Yeah, Vanderbilt.
So with Vanderbilt was one of those teams, like we mentioned earlier. They were able to flip their roster. They were able to bring in a lot of new assistant coaches and really had one of the better seasons in Vanderbilt history. Now, I know James Franklin had some pretty good years when he was there before he left off to go to Penn State. but the SEC was a lot different then. James Franklin didn't play the gauntlet that Vanderbilt played this year, and quite frankly, for them to go 7-5, it was pretty impressive. What's your highest of high?
My highest of high, I'm not going to steal one because I was going to have two, but you've got the other one. Uh, my highest of high for them and the MVP of their entire season is the New Mexico State offense and the transfer portal. The fact that they completely flipped their roster, brought in 50 new players. They got the offensive coordinator from New Mexico State. That alone just shifted the entire dynamic for the Vanderbilt Commodores season this year.
Yeah, I think the Alabama game has been talked about enough. I think definitely, the highest of high, but going a different route. I think the highest of high for Vanderbilt has got to be getting Diego Pavia back for another year. I don't like the rule. I don't like the fact that guys can go to JUCO for a couple of years and now all of a sudden they're going to be given an extra year. I'm tired of all the COVID stuff and the COVID years. I'm tired of having 24 and 25 and 26-year-olds playing a college sport that's meant for 18, 19, 20-year-olds. But it's got to be one of the high points for Vanderbilt to get him back.
Oh, absolutely. Pavia magic, baby. Electric guy to watch. Just crazy.
Absolutely.
Crazy. Lowest of low. Georgia Southern? Gotta be.
You got to be Georgia State. I mean, losing
Or Georgia
36
State.
to,
Yeah.
yeah, they opened up, beating Virginia Tech in overtime, beat Alcorn State 55-0. Vanderbilt's actually riding some momentum, and I can't believe I'm saying it, but Vanderbilt, who is normally the team that everybody else calls the trap game, Vanderbilt fell victim to a trap game via Georgia State. And I think that's got to be the low of lows.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Preseason rank for the Commodores was dead last, 16th. The Commodores finished tied for 11th in the SEC this year.
Yeah, I remember reading several preseason magazines and looking at several preseason articles, and most people predicted Vanderbilt to not win a game in the SEC.
Yep. 3-5 in the SEC. They have won a total of 3 SEC games. Before this season, they won a total of 3 SEC games between 2019 and 2023.
Mm-hmm.
And then won 3 in this season alone. So I gave them a B across the board. 7-6, finishing 6-6 on the year, beating a Georgia. What's their name?
Georgia State.
Georgia. No. In the bowl game, I went.
Oh,
blank.
in the
Georgia
Tech.
Tech. Georgia Tech. Beating a Georgia Tech team with Haynes King. B across the board. 86.
I'm going to be super high on Vanderbilt here, and
do it to them.
Here's the thing you don't realize: they lost by 3 in overtime to Missouri. They lost by 3 to Texas. They lost by 7 to LSU. They were, and I know you could do this about every team. If and buts were candy and nuts, we'd all have a Merry Christmas. I get all that, but you could change about 3 plays in Vanderbilt season, and they could have went 9-3 in the regular season. They could have been close to a 10-win team. I'm going to give Vanderbilt a solid A.
Oh,
when you consider
we are a few kernels short, baby, on today's podcast.
No, when you consider what they were predicted, that's what I'm going off of. What did everybody expect them to do? I'm not going to be one of those guys that says, okay, if you win the national championship, A+, and everybody's just going to be down from that. I'm looking at it. I'm looking at it based on your preseason expectations, and for a team that preseason was expected to go 2-10. To go 7-5 or 7-6, beating Alabama, taking Missouri to overtime, I'm going to say solid A for them.
I just couldn't give them an A. I just couldn't. I just couldn't. And I know we established the criteria way back when, but I wanted to pull a playoff commissioner move and change my criteria for Vanderbilt.
It's your podcast. You can do that.
It's my podcast. I can do that. Final thoughts. Everyone's favorite segment from Randy from Mobile. Final thoughts.
Don't be A freaking loser.
Oh man, wow, coming for them.
Yes, yes. I'm so sick of this stuff. And this came from reading an article that I read about Kansas basketball of all things.
Oh Lord.
About how Kansas basketball, preseason #1 team, top 4 team, how they've got players that have been given death threats because they've lost about 10 games. They're middle of the road in the Big 12. Don't be one of those freaking losers that starts DMing college players, telling them that they suck, telling them that they need to transfer, telling them that you wish they would unalive themselves. Don't be one of those losers that does. I can't stand that garbage. Have a little bit of dignity about yourself. And don't be that loser that does that to people. Don't be the loser that starts DMing a coach, telling him how pathetic he is and that he needs to leave. If you want to share your thoughts on social media, whatever, but don't go DMing people and saying that those kind of things and spewing that garbage.
Guys, these are college kids. These are
Yes.
18, 19. Now, with the advancement of the NIL, sure, you'll have a 26-year-old every now and then. But my goodness, I mean, that's that's harsh. Were they really doing that?
Yeah. Well, you can go back and you can look throughout the years. I can remember when Adam Griffith missed the kick that led to the kick 6 back in 2013. I can
Yes.
remember the death threats and things like that. Just don't do that. Yes, I understand that sports, for the most of us, sports is our #1 avenue of entertainment. When it comes to college, that's probably the closest that we feel is actually being a part of the team and a
Yeah.
part of the community
Yeah.
and all that stuff. I get it. I understand it. It makes me just as mad as anybody else. But my goodness, don't start DMing players and coaches and just have a little bit of dignity about yourself.
Goodness gracious. Goodness gracious. Well, guys.
Deep thoughts with Randy from Mobile.
Well, guys, that wraps up another episode of SEC Mafia, a football podcast. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe as always. Don't forget, tune in next week. I think we're going back to week now. We're on the cusp of college football again, so I think we're going to go week to week, look into some of the.
We are.
Are we? Are you going to go 2 weeks until?
I thought we were still going to go 2 weeks to about the middle of the summer.
2 weeks till middle of the summer. You heard it from Randy. It's his podcast. He does what he wants with it.
I just thought that's what we said. If you want to go 3 times a week, buddy, we'll go 3 times a week.
Oh my goodness, you hear that? That's like a TV show. That's a big time right there.
We're coming for you, Sports Center.
We're coming, Sports Center. No, just kidding though. Every 2 weeks, tune in again. 24th? That's 2 weeks from now. For another edition of SEC Mafia. Please like and subscribe. Hit us up on Facebook. You can DM us. We are grown adults here.
We can take it.
We can take that.
Yeah.
Just don't DM college players, please.
Right.
As always, we want to hear from you. Share your thoughts below. Thanks for joining us today.
Randy's out.